1560 Whitehall Palace. A queen stands in her private chamber, a sealed letter in her trembling hand. If its contents were revealed, it could end her reign and confirm the one rumor she has denied all her life. History remembers Elizabeth I as the Virgin Queen, married only to England. But in the shadows, there were whispers of stolen moments, dangerous alliances, and men who may have held more than just her trust. Were these affairs brilliant tools of statecraft, or forbidden passions that could have destroyed an empire? Tonight, we open the locked doors of her life and step into the secrets she fought to keep buried for 5 centuries. This is Royal Conspiracies, where we reveal the hidden scandals and untold truths of history's most powerful rulers. Subscribe, like, and share, because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about the Virgin Queen. The legend of the Virgin Queen didn't begin with a crown. It began with blood. Elizabeth was born on September 7, 1533, in Greenwich Palace, the daughter of King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. For a brief moment, she was celebrated as a royal heir, but her father's disappointment at her being a girl cast a shadow from the start. Anne Boleyn was intelligent, ambitious, and dangerous to those who preferred the old order. She had risen to queenship by seducing Henry away from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and away from the Catholic Church itself. But the same courtly whispers that lifted her up would later destroy her. When Elizabeth was 2, and was accused of adultery, incest, and treason, charges that most historians believe were fabricated by her enemies, and perhaps even supported by Henry himself to rid him of a wife who had failed to produce a son. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn walked to her execution. Elizabeth's title of princess was stripped from her. She was declared illegitimate. The young girl who should have been England's jewel was now a political pawn, one whose survival depended on silence, wit, and the careful art of reading people's intentions. The Thomas Seymour affair. By the age of 14, Elizabeth had already mastered the skill of self-preservation. But she was still vulnerable to charm, and Thomas Seymour was nothing if not charming. Seymour was the brother of the late Queen Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife and the mother of King Edward VI. When Henry died, his last wife, Catherine Parr, married Seymour in what was rumored to be a love match long delayed by the king's presence. Elizabeth, then a teenager, came to live with Catherine and Thomas. From the start, there were signs that Seymour's attentions toward Elizabeth were more than appropriate for a guardian. Morning visits to her chambers, playful tickling, flirtatious remarks, all in full view of servants. Catherine Parr, far from forbidding it, sometimes joined these games, perhaps to keep them from becoming something darker, or perhaps to disguise their true nature. But in Tudor England, perception was as dangerous as reality. When Catherine Parr died in childbirth in 1548, Seymour's behavior became harder to explain away. Rumors spread that he intended to marry Elizabeth, a move that could place him dangerously close to the throne. The scandal broke wide open when Seymour was arrested for treason. Elizabeth, just 15, was interrogated for weeks. Her responses were calculated. She admitted nothing, denied everything, and burned any letter that could compromise her. Whether she was innocent or simply clever enough to survive, we will never know. Seymour was executed in March 1549. Elizabeth walked away untouched, but she carried the lesson for life. In politics, love was a liability, unless you could turn it into a weapon. That lesson would become the cornerstone of her reign. She would use flirtation as diplomacy, affection as strategy, and marriage promises as bargaining chips. And yet, some connections were too personal, too real to be just politics. One of those connections was with Robert Dudley, the man whose name would be forever linked to the most dangerous scandal of Elizabeth's rule when Elizabeth ascended the throne in November 1558. She was 25 years old, young, intelligent, and, in the eyes of Europe, England's most eligible woman. Her court became a battlefield of suitors, each one representing not just personal desire, but political alliances and dangerous entanglements. But one man stood above all others. One man who wasn't just a suitor, but a childhood companion, a confidant, and perhaps much more. Robert Dudley. The two had known each other since their teenage years, both having suffered under the shadow of court politics during Queen Mary's reign. They shared more than friendship, they shared survival. Dudley had been imprisoned in the Tower of London with his father and brothers after his father's failed attempt to control the throne through Lady Jane Grey. Elizabeth herself had been imprisoned there, accused of conspiring against her sister Mary. They both knew the feel of cold stone walls, the scent of damp corridors, and the constant fear of execution. Perhaps it was that shared trauma that bound them, or perhaps something deeper, something that had been quietly growing for years. From the moment Elizabeth took the crown, Dudley was at her side. She appointed him Master of the Horse, a position that allowed him daily, intimate access to her. He could enter her private chambers without ceremony, travel with her, even ride beside her during hunts. It didn't take long for the court and foreign ambassadors to notice. The Spanish ambassador, Count de Feria, reported to King Philip II that Elizabeth was in love with Lord Robert. He claimed she spent more time with him than was proper for a queen, and that Dudley seemed equally besotted. But there was one inconvenient problem. Robert Dudley was already married. His wife, Amy Robsart, lived far from court, suffering from a mysterious illness that kept her confined. While Elizabeth and Dudley's closeness could be brushed off as childhood familiarity, the distance between him and his wife fueled a different kind of whisper, one that would soon erupt into scandal. On September 8, 1560, news spread like wildfire. Amy Robsart was dead. The official account was simple. She had been found at the bottom of a staircase in her home at Cumnor Place, her neck broken. The coroner's jury ruled it an accident, possibly caused by her fragile health. But the court, and indeed the whole of England, wasn't so ready to believe it. Whispers turned into accusations. Had Robert Dudley, desperate to be free, arranged for his wife's death? Did Elizabeth know? Was the Virgin Queen plotting to marry her childhood friend all along? For a monarch who had been on the throne less than 2 years, this was political dynamite. The idea that Elizabeth could be involved in, or even merely tolerate, such a scandal threatened to undo her carefully built image. Elizabeth's reaction was masterful in its cold precision. She ordered Dudley to remove himself from court for a time, distancing herself publicly from the tragedy. Privately, she continued to correspond with him, but the dream of marriage, if it had ever truly existed, was buried alongside Amy Robsart. Yet the rumors never died. For decades, gossip painted Dudley as her true love. The man she would have married had circumstances allowed. Some claimed they continued an affair in secret, meeting in hidden chambers and exchanging gifts. Others insisted their relationship was entirely political, a performance designed to distract foreign ambassadors and keep potential suitors guessing. Elizabeth never confirmed nor denied. That was her greatest weapon, the deliberate ambiguity that kept everyone, including Dudley himself, dancing to her tune. The Dudley scandal taught Elizabeth that her personal life could be just as potent a tool of statecraft as any treaty or army. By controlling the narrative, never revealing the full truth, she could keep powerful men chasing an answer they would never receive. And chase they did. Kings, princes, dukes, and even pirates would line up for the Virgin Queen's hand. Some came for power, some came for love, and some never left alive. Elizabeth had barely warmed the throne when rumors began to coil like smoke around her court. The year was 1559, barely months after her coronation, and London was still unsure whether this young queen could rule without a husband. The pressure was relentless. Ambassadors from Spain, France, and Austria paraded through her court, each bringing portraits of eligible princes, hoping to bind England to their crowns. But Elizabeth had a different kind of fascination. In the great gallery of Whitehall, under glittering tapestries and the flicker of torchlight, a man stood at her side, tall, dark-haired, and with eyes that dared to meet the Queen's without flinching. His name was Robert Dudley, the childhood bond. Dudley was no stranger. He and Elizabeth had been imprisoned in the Tower of London together during the reign of her sister, Mary I. They had both tasted fear, both heard the midnight footsteps of guards who came for others and never returned them. That shared terror forged a bond, the kind of bond that survives politics and survives time. Now, as master of the horse, Dudley had daily access to her private chambers, to her morning walks, her late-night conversations, her most unguarded moments. It didn't take long for courtiers to notice the way her eyes lingered on him, or how his hand sometimes brushed hers in the corridors. One Spanish ambassador wrote to King Philip II, "It is said that she visits his chamber day and night, and he hers." For a queen whose legitimacy was already questioned, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, executed for alleged adultery, these rumors were dynamite. The Privy Council began to worry. If Elizabeth gave her heart to Dudley, she might refuse every foreign marriage alliance, leaving England vulnerable. And then came the event that turned whispers into open scandal. Robert Dudley was married. His wife, Amy Robsart, lived far from court, in Oxfordshire. On September 8, 1560, she was found dead at the bottom of a staircase. Her neck was broken. Was it an accident, or was it murder? The coroner's jury declared it an accident, but few believed it. Gossip painted Dudley as an ambitious man who cleared the path to the Queen's hand. Others whispered that Elizabeth herself had ordered it, blinded by love. The court was split. To marry Dudley now would be political suicide, but to dismiss him? Impossible. Elizabeth kept him close, fueling every rumor. It was a dangerous game, and perhaps that was exactly why she played it. The image of the Virgin Queen, unattached, desired by many, owned by none, was one of the greatest political weapons in her arsenal. Every suitor, foreign or domestic, had to wonder if they might win her favor. Dudley's presence kept them guessing. But Dudley was not the only man who would test her resolve, nor the only one whose name would echo through history in connection to her. In the years to come, other faces would appear at her side. Men with charm, ambition, and secrets of their own, men who might have risked everything to claim the Queen's heart, and one of them would nearly cost her the throne. The corridors of Whitehall were not just corridors. They were veins, pulsing with information, gossip, and subtle exchanges that could make or break a courtier overnight. Elizabeth understood this better than anyone. She knew that her survival as an unmarried queen depended on controlling not only the policies of her court but also the desires and ambitions of those who served her. And in this web there were flies, and there were spiders. One of the most dangerous men in her orbit was Robert Dudley, the childhood friend whose charm and ambition were a double-edged sword. Their bond was undeniable, forged in shared memories and strengthened by the fact that both had known hardship. Dudley had endured imprisonment in the Tower of London after his father's disastrous attempt to place Lady Jane Grey on the throne. Elizabeth had also been held in that same tower, accused of plotting against Queen Mary. They had survived together, and survival forged a loyalty that felt unshakable. But rumors grew like ivy on the palace walls. Ambassadors whispered that Dudley visited the Queen's chambers at strange hours. Courtiers noticed glances held too long, smiles exchanged too warmly. The Spanish envoy went so far as to write to King Philip II that Elizabeth was in the power of Robert Dudley. And then came the scandal that could have shattered everything. The death of Amy Robsart, Dudley's wife. Amy had been found at the bottom of a staircase in 1560, her neck broken. The official verdict: an accident. But the timing was too perfect, the location too suspicious. The moment she was gone, the whispers became a roar. Had Dudley arranged her death so he could marry Elizabeth? Elizabeth's council was alarmed. To take Dudley as a husband now would be political suicide. Yet she could not sever ties with him. She kept him close, granting him the title of Earl of Leicester, making sure his loyalty, and perhaps his heart, remained hers. It was a dangerous dance, because behind every step foreign ambassadors were watching. Spain, France, and Rome all speculated that if Dudley married Elizabeth, England would descend into civil unrest. Her image as the chaste, untouchable Virgin Queen would be destroyed. And perhaps that was the secret of her strategy, to keep Dudley wanting, to keep every man guessing. By never giving herself fully, she ensured they never stopped chasing her favor. But Dudley was not the only player in this game. Another figure soon entered the scene: Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spymaster. He saw romance not as a courtly distraction but as a political weapon. Every potential suitor, every whispered exchange, every private meeting was a chance to gather intelligence or plant misinformation. Walsingham began to track not only foreign threats but the Queen's own relationships, ensuring that her affections never endangered the realm. In the years to come, Elizabeth's tangled personal life would prove to be as much a tool of diplomacy as her armies or treaties. Each smile could spark an alliance. Each cold glance could ignite war. And soon, a man unlike any other would arrive at her court. A man whose presence would test her discipline, her image, and her control over her own legend. Elizabeth knew she was a prize. Not just in terms of beauty or charm, though portraits, even after centuries, show a certain magnetic presence, but in political value. Her marriage, if it ever happened, could shift the balance of power in Europe. That made her not only the most sought-after bride, but also the most dangerous one. From Spain, from France, from Scotland, ambassadors and princes came with gilded smiles and veiled threats. Every man who approached her was a potential ally or a hidden dagger. And Elizabeth played them with the precision of a master card dealer, never showing her full hand. Today, the question remains, was Queen Elizabeth truly the Virgin Queen, or was she the most cunning lover in English history, hiding her passions not from shame, but from necessity? We may never know, and perhaps that's exactly how she wanted it. If you think you've uncovered the truth, or if you believe her secrets are still buried somewhere in England's archives, then join us as we continue to unravel the scandals, conspiracies, and forbidden romances of history's most powerful rulers. This is Royal Conspiracies, where the crown's shine hides its darkest shadows. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, because the next story might just change the way you see history forever.